Have you ever heard of YODO? YODO, not YOLO, YODO. You only die once. I'm going to explain to you today why YODO is superior to YOLO. You only live once. And I'm going to use Imane Khelif, the male XY chromosome boxer who's fighting in the Olympics against women. That's today's Fearless. Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I am Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Monday. Thank you for joining me. We have a great show planned for you today. TJ Moe and Steve Kim will join me shortly. But before we get to TJ and Steve, before I get to the fire starter, make sure you're a Blaze TV subscriber so you can get that extra Fearless content. Go to blazetv.com/fearless, use the promo code Fearless, and you can save $20 on your yearly subscription. All right. So without further ado, let's get to today's fire starter, and then I'll fan the flames. According to the Associated Press, racial bigotry and 160 years dead American slavery, they drive the controversy engulfing Algerian boxer Imane Khelif's bid for Olympic gold. Nah, it's not Khelif's XY chromosomes or high testosterone levels. It's racism. That's it. That's why many American sports fans object to Khelif's participation in the women's division. The objections aren't based in fairness or concern for women athletes. Nope, racism. In a story headline, for female athletes of color, scrutiny around the gender rules and identity is part of a long trend. Writer Noreen Nasser argues that female athletes of color have historically faced disproportionate scrutiny and discrimination. Nasser further claims that dehumanization and objectification stretches back to chattel slavery, when enslaved black women were valued for auction based on their physical appearances and skills that were seen as more masculine or more feminine. Well, Khelif has male chromosomes and testosterone levels that go along with XY, not XX. I don't know whether Khelif has a bat and balls. It's really none of my business. I do know that elevated testosterone levels give Khelif a decided advantage over women. I do know my objection to Khelif competing as a woman has nothing to do with racial bigotry or chattel slavery. I objected to William Leah Thomas competing in NCAA swimming as a woman. Bill Leah is a white man. As far as I know, his ancestors weren't dehumanized during chattel slavery. The Associated Press, no different from the International Olympic Committee, has jumped on board with the worldview that man is his own God. Man, not God or science, determines gender and everything else. The IOC adopted the standard that whatever is on your passport has final say, so as it relates to gender. Khelif was raised a girl, so therefore his XY chromosomes have no standing. Anyone who objects to this heretical standard is labeled as racist, homophobic, transphobic, and out of step with the way of the world. This thinking is fueling the gender chaos sweeping American culture. In St. Louis, hundreds of Lifetime Fitness gym members have been engaged in a battle with management over a 50-year-old man who is self-identified as a woman. He acquired state-issued identification backing up his false claim. Lifetime Fitness feels handcuffed, so the bat and balls homeless man has been showering with women and children. The manager at Lifetime Fitness, a young black woman, has been defending the man's right to do so. The manager believes she's making a righteous stand. In her mind, she's Rosa Parks 2.0, protecting the rights of a mentally deranged white man who wants to shower with women and children is a form of racial justice. This manager, Lauren, she's bought the lies of corporate media. She's bought the lies of a society that aggressively rejects a biblical worldview and promotes man as his own God. The Associated Press is preaching to a choir, a congregation that believes happiness, not obedience, salvation, and eternal joy, is the purpose of life. The Declaration of Independence's promise of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is the most misapplied passage in American history. Many scholars, in particular Arthur M. Schlesinger Jr., argued that pursuit of happiness meant something different in the 1700s and to the nation's founders. It wasn't about chasing happiness. It was about acquiring it and enjoying it, meaning we have the right to life, liberty, and the enjoyment of happiness. But let's not take the interpretation of Schlesinger, a famous historian from the 1950s and 60s. Let's turn to John Locke, an English philosopher from the 1600s. It was Locke's writings that inspired Thomas Jefferson to include the pursuit of happiness in the Declaration of Independence. Locke's understanding of the pursuit of happiness came from Aristotle. Happiness had nothing to do with pleasure or satisfying desires. Locke deemed those as imaginary. Locke wrote, "The necessity of pursuing happiness is the foundation of liberty, as therefore the highest perfection of intellectual nature lies in a careful and constant pursuit of true and solid happiness, so the care of ourselves that we mistake no imaginary for real happiness is the necessary foundation of our liberty. The stronger ties we have to an unalterable pursuit of happiness in general, which is our greatest good, and which, as such, our desires always follow, the more are we free from any necessary determination of our will to any particular action." Did you follow all of that? Our desires and pleasure, that's not what he was talking about when he talked about the pursuit of happiness. Go read it, look it up for yourself. The pursuit of happiness meant something completely different in the 1700s, 1600s than what we believe today. In modern secular America, we've reduced happiness to the pursuit of our wildest and most pleasurable fascinations. We've convinced ourselves that we cannot truly be happy unless our every desire is met. This mindset is antithetical to Christianity. The Bible teaches us that a man's desires are corrupt and sinful. The Bible prioritizes obedience, salvation, and joy. Man cannot comprehend true happiness outside the kingdom of God. The pursuit of happiness is a fool's errand. That errand leads to XY men to live a life as XX women. That errand leads to excessive drinking and gambling, drug abuse, sexual promiscuity, pedophilia, homosexuality, theft, lying, abortion, you name it. Imane Khelif wants nothing more than to be happy, a fleeting emotion that creates confusion and bad decision making. It's YOLO, you only live once, thinking. YOLO blinds. It replaces long-term vision with instant gratification. Thomas Jefferson, this nation's founders, and its early citizens believed in YODO, you only die once. They believed in eternal life through obedience to God, salvation through Christ, and joy through the Holy Spirit. Divergent worldviews are at the root of the Imane Khelif controversy, not bigotry. That is my fire starter. Let me expound. Do you see all the things that we talk about on this show are caught up and are a part of what's going on with Imane Khelif, and I can't remember the name of the Asian boxer that's also an XY man fighting in the Olympics. But everything we talk about on this show, instant gratification, man seeing himself as God as the determining factor in what truth is, the pursuit of happiness or feelings, the satisfaction of pleasuring ourselves, not being obedient to God or really anything other than our own desires. That's what's at the root of what we're seeing in these Olympics and this controversy engulfing the Olympics. It's all a reflection of a secular worldview. The Associated Press masks and doesn't want you to see what's at the root of this battle of good versus evil, this battle between man and God, between man's corrupt, sinful nature and what God wants for us. They don't want you to see it, and so what they tell you is everything's a racial conflict. They reduce everything to race and racism and say, hey, go look over there. It's race and racism. That's what's at the root of the associate. Here's, just imagine. You got a dude with XY chromosomes beating up women in the Olympic Games. This dude is from Algeria. And the Associated Press, which is an American institution, I don't care where Noreen Nasser is from, I don't care where she's located. The Associated Press is a media institution that we created and should reflect American values and an American worldview. It doesn't do that anymore, or Americans' values and worldview has been so secularized that it's so in objection to God that, again, our Christian founding has been uprooted. And so the Associated Press, instead of saying, hey, this is a clash of worldviews, what determines gender? Is it God? Is it science? Or is it man? God made man and woman with unique, different chromosomes. And yes, I do know, or according to a lot of the conversation and speculation, is this person, Imane, was born intersex. Maybe he doesn't have the bat and balls that most men have, but he has the XY chromosomes and he has the elevated testosterone levels that indicate and determine that he's a man. He's in a different category and classification than women with XX chromosomes and lower testosterone levels. And so, however you want to argue it, from a God perspective or a science perspective, his chromosomes should eliminate him from competing against women. But since we now live in this very secular world, and since we now have all adopted a very secular mindset that man is God, and that satisfying and pleasuring and pleasing ourselves is the primary objective of life. And I don't want to demonize the people who think this way, because they've been socialized, programmed, and trained in this, brainwashed into this mindset. On Friday, and I'm telling my sister is a smart woman, she's well-intentioned, but again, as you listen to us talk on Friday, she thinks the pursuit of happiness is the point of life. I disagree. I understand why she thinks that way. I used to think that way when I had a very unsophisticated, unresearched, just, hey, whatever leads me to orgasmic pleasure, whatever leads my taste buds to pleasure, whatever made me happy in the moment was, hey, that's the whole key to life, and that's what life is all about. This very fleeting moment of satisfaction. But then once you do the homework, and I'm talking about in the Bible, once you've lived long enough, you should start figuring out, but most people don't, you should start figuring out, hey, this little fleeting deal, it's not worth it. And it's not sustainable. And it makes you make a bunch of bad decisions. I joked over Twitter this week, but I was making a real point that take, for instance, all the men and or women that are running around thinking there's no higher level of contentment, happiness, satisfaction than sexual pleasure. And I said to most men, as soon as we have a happy ending, most of us fall right to sleep. And in the few moments we have before falling right to sleep, we squeeze in a bunch of bad decisions. We make a bunch of promises that we have no intention of keeping. We do things in pursuit of that fleeting 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 20 seconds of, oh, this is the great, my toes are curled. How many bad decisions do we make in pursuit of having our toes momentarily curled? And then we fall asleep and wake up, and then we wake up an hour later. It's like, oh man, look at the dumb stuff I did for that 15 seconds of joy. And again, okay, call it 30 minutes before the happy ending. Call it an hour before the happy ending. It's never worth it. And it leads to a bunch of dumb decisions. That's what we've, in a short-term view, a microwave view of society, that's what we've reduced the whole purpose of life for. Momentary, brief feelings of happiness. Jason Whitlock stops at McDonald's for 7 minutes of eating pleasure. Is it worth it? Is it true happiness? Does it lead to problems? It's short-sighted thinking, and that's how, when I arrived at, like, oh my God, we've been convinced that you only live once is some important idiom, philosophy to live your world by. And you actually, if you're willing to obey, follow, repent, serve Jesus Christ, you can live forever. And so the only thing that really happens once is death. You can live forever. You can only die once. And if we had that worldview, how would our decision making be different? You follow you only live once, and most people are like, oh my God, let me squeeze in as much as I can. I could die tomorrow. I could get hit by a car tomorrow and be dead. I could get cancer and be dead. I could have a heart attack. I could get shot by a stray bullet. Anything, I could die. So, oh my God, I must pleasure myself as often as I can between now and death. Because you only live once. If we had the mentality of you only die once and the right relationship with God, you will live forever. Our approach would be completely different. We would see ourselves as visitors here on this planet. This is not eternal. This is a temporary holding station for those of us hoping, striving, living a life hoping to get to eternal salvation rather than damnation in hell. But let's, and I hate to do this because it takes us away from truth, but I've already explained the truth for you. Now, let's say you don't believe in God. But let's say you have a mature outlook on life, a sophisticated outlook on life. You have a long-term vision about life. This instant gratification society, this world that we've created, and customs and culture that we've created, where whatever someone feels or thinks must be validated and they must have a right to pursue it. And so Imane Khelif believes he's a woman. And there are many people that run around, oh my God, if you deny this man his belief, you're not being inclusive, you're not being fair to him. And so instead, hey, let's have chaos for everyone. Let's let this XY man beat up XX women in the Olympics. Let's let a 50-year-old homeless man in St. Louis who has a bat and balls, let's let him go get an ID or a driver's license or some state-issued identification that says he's a woman, and then let's set him free to shower with women and children. 50-year-old homeless man with a bat and balls between his legs in submission to, obedience to the word inclusion, we have to let him shower with with women and children. Are you kidding me? This is how you run a society? So that one homeless man can satisfy and pleasure himself and live out his bizarre, deranged fantasy? Everybody else must suffer? Children have to be exposed to his bat and balls in a shower? This is the society we're creating. That everything is for everybody and whatever anybody wants to do. And so if William Thomas wants to change his name to Leah, keep his bat and balls, switch to women's swimming, and then be allowed to shower, get naked in front of women, and go out and steal their accomplishments in the swimming pool, we have to allow that because that's inclusive. We now have to have same-sex bathrooms where women and children are more vulnerable than before. We have to uproot everything for this small handful of people that I have sympathy for, but I can't uproot and turn the world upside down for them, because here's where this thinking goes. Let's say Stevie Wonder decides, hey man, I identify as a race car driver. Should he be allowed to join NASCAR? And in order to be inclusive, should we let him drive in NASCAR and risk the other 30, 40 drivers on the track? Or should we say, you know what, Stevie Wonder, unfortunately, and I feel sympathy for him, was born blind. He won't be a race car driver. He won't be a bus driver. He won't drive a motorcycle. That's not for him. There are all kinds of things that are outside our control, that we pray for people, we have sympathy for people, but we don't change all the rules for them. So for those of you, again, you don't have to have my biblical worldview. Just common sense says that, hey, tough break, bro. I get it. You're feeling a little womanly, but your testosterone levels and your chromosomes say you're a man. You're going to have to deal with that. If you want to fight, go fight other people with XY chromosomes and elevated testosterone levels. It's really that simple. But the Associated Press and everybody else in the media says Jason Whitlock and anybody who thinks that way is some sort of transphobic, homophobic, racist, coon, sellout, something or else. This is insanity, and I'm so sick of people of color, black people, or whatever, buying into this mentality and philosophy because the Associated Press and corporate media has said, yeah, this is the black thing to do. And anybody that opposes you, and we'll have TJ Moe on here in a second to talk about this Lauren, this manager at Lifetime Fitness. But she's arguing this is the way of the world and you need to get on board with it. And her argument is, hey, everybody's jumping off a building. You need to jump too. It's this group mentality. It's this group think. It's this follow the crowd mentality that is dangerous because the world just keeps getting more and more and more insane, more and more in rejection to obvious truth, and they want you to get on board because everybody's doing it. And this mentality, it's why your kids are being told, you know what? And this is the overall message, is you shouldn't be heterosexual. You should be pansexual. You should be down for anything and whatever. That's what they're telling your kids, is that you abandon traditional identities, abandon traditional worldviews, be down for any and everything. That's a proper person. That's someone that fits in with where the world is going. And at some point, those of us with sanity and reverence for truth, we're going to have to draw a line in the sand and say, enough is enough. I'm not going there. And so the AP is going to tell you this is a racial conflict. This is a morality conflict. This is a divergence of worldview conflict. This is good versus evil. I'll let you make your own decision about what's the good side, what's the evil side. I know what side I'm on. I don't care how you describe. You can call me good or evil, but I'm just for me. I'm for what the Bible says. I'm for what, in this case, I'm for what the science says. I don't have to go off into bizarro world and fantasy land with you and pretend like Imane Khelif and these other I don't have to pretend like Brittany Griner. I don't have to pretend about any of it. That man has XY chromosomes. He needs to be competing against people with XY chromosomes. Trust the science. Or if you're me, trust God. I'm going to bring TJ Moe on next because I want to go a little bit deeper into the Lifetime Fitness controversy that's going on in St. Louis. Before I do that, I want to share with you about our work with Preborn. You guys know Preborn. It's a organization, institution that supports our worldview that life begins at conception. Preborn does this by providing expectant mothers who are considering abortion an ultrasound. Ultrasound introduces that baby growing in the woman's womb to that baby's image and heartbeat, and then that changes and makes it twice as likely for that woman to choose life, and that's where preborn steps in, steps up, provides that woman the support she needs to get through that pregnancy and for the first 2 years of that baby's life outside of the womb. An ultrasound costs just $28. You can pay for 5 ultrasounds, $140. No matter what you give, it all goes towards supporting life and supporting our worldview that life begins at conception. It all goes towards saving the lives of babies. There's 2 ways to give. Pound 250, say the keyword baby, pound 250, keyword baby, or you can give the way I prefer to give, preborn.com/fearless. That's preborn.com/fearless. Please, when you do, email me, fearlessblazeshow@gmail.com. Tell me about it. It inspires me. It inspires the show. Thank you so much. Next, TJ Moe, and we'll talk a little bit more about Lifetime Fitness because TJ is a member at the Lifetime Fitness where the 50-year-old homeless man with bat and balls is being allowed to shower with women and children. Next.
I thought he was being a bit slick by showing up today at 12 noon Central Time anyway, because as a black journalist, as somebody that has gone to the NABJ on many, many occasions, let me assure you, most people ain't showing up by 12 noon on a Wednesday.
Leslie, guess what today is?
It's hump day.
Woo-hoo! You want a packed house where everybody is there waiting for you. You usually show up on a Thursday or beyond.
Trump, you're showing up on the wrong day. You should have showed up on Thursday. That's when the good weed gets in on Thursday or Friday, Donald. What are you crazy?
Oh, hey, listen, try this. I told my weed guy to step it up, and he gave me that.
What is it?
It's called Mind Rape. It's actually pretty mellow.
And, you know, I can't wait to see what Stephen A. is going to wear walking in there on Thursday or Friday looking like the Pink Panther.
Welcome back. Let's roll out to St. Louis. TJ, you're a member at Lifetime Fitness where this conflict is going on. What's the status at the moment between the 50-year-old bat and balls homeless man and common sense and normal people objecting to this man showering with women and children?
Well, the most recent update, I'll give you this, and then we can backtrack into the details. But this is happening. We're taping this at about noon Central Time. It's chaos right now at the gym, actually. I'm getting messages from a lot of different women. There are cops everywhere. There's 3 sitting right outside the building, and there's a female police officer going through every locker in the women's room. So this woman that I spoke to was actually in the locker room, saw the guy come in, grabbed her stuff, and walked out. And as she walked out, she saw this. So they're going through all the lockers, and management's rushing around. The GM sitting in his office talking to some people. And I've been told that he's just been escorted out of the building and terminated. And he actually just posted that on his social media. He said Lifetime Fitness just decided to solve their trans girl in the locker room problem by misreading my remarks today as threats of violence rather than threats of lawsuits and terminating my membership and having the police walk me out. So this was going to happen. The general
Whoa. Who got walked out? The homeless man or the general manager?
No, the homeless man. The general manager is the guy that has been having to deal with this. So look, the general manager is actually a great dude. I think he's a guy with 3 daughters and a wife, and I sat in his office for 30 minutes and raised all of my objections. He was actually great. I tend to think he agrees with us, and he's stuck with an ultra woke Minnesota-based corporation, and his hands are tied.
Publicly traded.
Publicly traded, yes. And by the way, I'm not done going after them. This is just because he's not walking in there doesn't mean they don't have garbage policies, and they didn't treat us like garbage while they were going through this. And so But it appears, for the moment at least, this guy is out. Now, I will tell you, his social media, if you go through it, the locker room deal is all I needed to be upset and throw the fit that I'm throwing. But you go beyond that into the sort of deranged ideas and the mental illness that this guy has to go along with his trans mental illness. This morning, somebody messaged me at 5 a.m. and said they were sitting in the parking lot at Lifetime, and his wife comes with him, and she was going through his stuff, and this guy was rampage tweeting this morning and on Facebook and different things, and she said, he's throwing out threats. There's no way I can walk inside this building. And so, I mean, he's talked about his name, Iris Discordia, means strife and mortality or something, and these are like gods of some sort. Who knows? The guy is so mentally deranged. I mean, he is a shoot up the place type of guy. He's got, I'm certainly a gun guy. I think everybody should have guns. For a guy to be, posting the stuff that he does and then living out of his car on the premises, at least for a time, and posting about his guns and what's supposed to be a gun-free zone. Well, I don't believe in gun-free zones. I mean, you put all these things together and with his threats, and you think, why would anybody ever feel safe here? And your policy is just to allow this guy alone with our women and children.
This sounds like a situation that really, really needs to be monitored because he's unstable, he has guns, he's homeless, he's made threats. At some point, if the next sentence were, and he shot up the place, no one would be surprised at this point. And so is that why there's so much law enforcement there? And this sounds like this could be an ongoing concern for quite some time. Over the next year or two, I would be concerned about this particular human being.
Yeah, and absolutely. And not only just this guy, but look, a lot of these guys travel in packs. You get on his Facebook and there's other trans guys saying they're going to join this gym. And so you see this type of response and we become a target. And so we're well aware of that. This, again, why there has to be a policy change. First of all, now, because you had such a terrible policy to begin with, you're going to have to pay for beefed up security at your front door and make sure your members are safe. Because look, it's a very high end gym. It costs you like $200 a month to be at this place. And the amount of women, I've had, I don't know, dozens, maybe 100 women reach out to me from this specific location saying, hey, this is where I go to go feel safe. This is where I bring my kids, and they have a daycare. Most gyms don't have daycares. They have a daycare. They'll take your kids for like 2.5 hours, and you can go, and you expect to be protected. And it's in a very safe suburb of St. Louis. It's not a place you would remotely think, hey, you maybe have to be dodging some bullets or some crazy people around here. And a guy walks in with a swinging bat and balls, and everybody's just good with it in management. And it's taken a full week for them to take any action whatsoever when this stuff was evident from day one. I mean, I made a call the first day. You mentioned Lauren. I said, hey, can I talk to the manager? I've got a problem with what's going on here. And they said, okay. And they transferred the head guy, who, again, is very good, was not there. Lauren, underneath, I think she's pretty young. My guess is she's 24, 25. I don't know, but she's recently been promoted. She used to work the front desk. I've spoken to a ton of the employees at this place. Many of them have thanked me for not only pointing out how horrible Lauren is, but also just they don't agree with any of this and they're stuck and they don't get to say anything against it. And so, the way she's treated all of us, me and Lauren went back and forth. I said, look, my wife and my 3-year-old daughter are changing this place. And, there's a guy standing naked in front of the sink shaving. Like, you think that's okay? This guy gets off by undressing in front of women and children. And by the way, this guy says that he is a female lesbian. So he's wrong, but he's a straight guy, okay? So he likes all of these women and children that he pretends he's open about all of this. And so, Lauren goes on to lecture me immediately about, well, this is a trans woman, so this is a she, and you need to be respectful. And so anyway, the conversation went south from there. It did not go well for me or her, but there's nothing I can do. And then she went on. I spoke to some employees after posting this, and the employees are like, hey, look, we're ready to lose our jobs over this. This is crazy. One that I spoke to also has a 3-year-old. And she said to us when we raised our concerns that, hey, look, after work, I bring my 3-year-old in there, we change. We're very concerned about this. And they said, well, look, this is the way the world's going. And so you need to learn this as a teaching moment. You need to use this as a teaching moment for your children, because this is the way the world's going. And they're like, how can you possibly stick around a place like this? And again, this woman has no business being in charge whatsoever. I don't know if you saw the video that I posted of her celebrating the Donald Trump assassination attempt. I mean, this is a 25-year-old black woman who thinks she's a girl boss, and she's a real problem.
How does the guy, a homeless man, afford $200 a month for his gym? How does I get? Maybe it's $200 a month for the right to shower with women, and he just builds that into his budget. Literally builds that into his budget and sleeps in his car. He'd rather have the right to shower with women than to perhaps have an apartment. I don't know.
Okay, so this guy is an IT whiz apparently. So he does coding. So it's not like he's unemployed. All of his work he sits there and does from his vehicle, perhaps from Lifetime Fitness and their internet. I mean, he just sits there and does coding all day. This is the stuff that he talks about. He's a computer programmer. And so that is part of his deal. Secondly, it's not like this guy's just been a bum, out in San Francisco on drugs his whole life. If you go back on his Facebook profile, in 2020, he was married with a child, a normal straight guy. And so now he has moved into this place and decided, he says that he knew he was a girl when he was 10 years old, but he put on a face for society because everybody told him he was weird and wrong for another, 40 years after that. And so now finally he's free, which, by the way, is another thing Lauren went on to say. When these people raised their concerns, Lauren went on to tell them all she did was defend this guy. She said, he's fine. She is what Lauren said, is finally happy. And you can see how someone would not feel accepted. And you just need to understand, you guys got to stop thinking about yourselves. Thinking about myself, how about I'm thinking about my 3-year-old? And yeah, a little bit of myself, not seeing this guy swinging dick in my locker room.
Man, this is, when I listen to his story, I wonder how many of these newly out of the closet, hey, I'm really a woman, are really failed men who use, hey, let me lower my standards, let me make things easier for me. I'm just going to transition into a woman because I don't like the pressure and the responsibility of being a man. And I can just transition into being a woman, and all the standards and just the way society is rigged now, I'll get the benefit of the doubt and a bunch of other benefits from identifying as a woman. Now, I'm a minority now. This certainly beats being a white male in a society that keeps telling white men they're the worst thing on the planet.
It's a great question. And, that we've certainly seen the uptick, right? And it is undeniable how many more people are identifying as trans today. And it seems a little bit weird to do it when you're 51 years old. Like, you'd think if you were a little confused, you might be 6 or 7. Maybe you're 18, you finally got permission. 51 after you got a family, probably not. And again, all of this stuff is used as a cudgel to, they manipulate us. It is emotional manipulation. This particularly, we had a very large, probably 100, 200 people at a protest right outside Lifetime Fitness. And we have a really good state rep named Justin Sparks who called a press conference and said, we're immediately investigating this. And if there are laws that don't protect us from this, we're going to make those laws immediately. And this guy shows up. And of course, all the liberal media paint the story around what a victim he is. And, one of the first things that he tells the women, by the way, it was all women around him. There were no men supporting him at all. It was all women. It's always the ultra obese, disgusting women that are the supporters of the trans agenda. One of them had a whistle, blew the whistle the entire press conference and the entire protest. The other one had a big trans flag up. These people are crazy, but this guy tells everybody around him, guys, you have to let me in the women's locker room or else I'll kill myself. And this is, because I'll feel like I'm cast out of society. And you guys, you're not accepting me. And again, if you don't think that's mental illness, I don't know what to tell you. If somebody says, if you don't let me do this, then I will kill myself. Like, hey, I need to rob this bank. If you don't let me do this, I'll kill myself. You better let me rob this bank. That is a mental illness. We should be checking these people into psych wards. And thank God there's been a few brave women. There's one woman in particular who I've been in contact with for the last week or so. who's the very first person to see all this. She's in the locker room when it happened. Her husband's a Marine. She says she's, I think, 38, 40 years old, something like that. And she's like, I got my belief system, and there's no way I'm standing around while this guy, invades our locker room with a bunch of kids in there and a bunch of young, unsuspecting girls. I mean, the guy's in there yesterday shaving, and not everybody lives on social media like us and knows what's going on. So you get these, 18, 19-year-old girls who walk in there and they're like shell-shocked. What is there doing a dude who's, by the way, he's got a cul-de-sac, he's got no hair up top, but he's got grown out long hair in the back. It's like that commercial of John Clayton, if you've ever seen that one, where he's got the long ponytail. Yeah, that's exactly it. And so anyway, this woman walks up to him and says, hey man, I think you're in the wrong locker room. And he's like, I have more estrogen than you do. She's like, maybe so, but you don't have these. And she pointed to her boobs. And so he lifts up his shirt and grabs. He's like, do these belong in the men's restroom? I don't think so. She's like, you're kidding, man. You got to get out of here. This is crazy. Went to management, and management said, it says female on his ID, so this is what we're going to do. By the way, you'll never believe who signed him up. It was Lauren.
Signed him up
Gave him
for
a
this
tour.
ID or?
Oh, not the ID. I'm saying gave him a tour, encouraged him, said, yeah, we got no problems here. By the way, the real problem we have, because we have had the Attorney General involved here. Our Attorney General, Andrew Bailey, by the way, this is the primary is tomorrow. If you are going to vote for anyone in Missouri, vote for Andrew Bailey. Holy cow, this dude's amazing. We've had an incredible run of Attorney Generals in Missouri. Josh Hawley was our AG. Eric Schmidt was our Attorney General. They're both now United States Senators. Andrew Bailey is now next on the list, and dude's amazing. I was on the phone with him that night, his office, and he had an investigation announced and multiple lawsuits already in the works within 24 hours of hearing this story. So we have the right people involved. It's going where it needs to go. But my issue here is, and I don't want this conversation to stop, because this guy's going to be gone and everybody's going to relax. I'm telling you, we're a target now. And if they don't change this policy, we should be hammering in on Lifetime Fitness, no different than Planet Fitness, no different than Bud Light. If they refuse to protect our women and children, then we should be boycotting them and bankrupting them.
Well, just remember, expectations end up determining people's level of satisfaction. And so we've created, with all this transgender stuff and transphobia assaults, we've created the expectations like, hey, I got a bat and balls, but I think I'm a woman. I should be able to go into a locker room. Now, it's an expectation now. And so before we converted to this standard, this man wouldn't have those expectations, and so he wouldn't be disappointed. It's like, hey, this is just the way of the world. I got a bat and balls. I got a beard. I got male genitalia, and so I shouldn't have the expectations of having the right to shower with women and children. So this problem can show up anywhere. And so people are watching like, oh, that's a nice little problem they're having in St. Louis. Thank God I don't live in TJ's neighborhood. No, it's going to happen in your neighborhood, because these expectations are being established globally as you look at the Olympics, you look at everywhere. And so eventually there's going to be some failed man who's going to say, you know what, I'm going to go the Bruce Jenner route. I'm going to convert to this new gender identity religion and receive all the benefits, because people are capable of it. Again, he's no different than Bruce Jenner saying, yeah, I'm a woman, but I still want to bone women. I still want to bone women. So, it's a lie. It's a gift. It's the ultimate grift, as you would. And then to use the childlike emotional manipulation, because it is deranged, but it's mostly just childlike. If I don't get my way, I'm going to throw a tantrum. I'm going to kill myself. And so you start giving kids things to make them happy or to make them not be depressed, rather than, now let me hand you some more of this truth here, buddy, and you're going to have to move into my world, not your illusional, delusional world. It's tough, and then you have to be prepared mentally that some people can't handle the truth, and they may do something awful to themselves, but it's not your fault. It's not your fault. We've built a society and expectations that are unhealthy for people, that you're always going to be happy. You always get to pursue whatever it is you want to pursue. There are no limitations. There are no lines in the sand. There are no boundaries for your desires and feelings. And so, you know what? Hey, it's that old slippery slope. Oh, well, let me give them the right to vote. That'll make them happy. No, it won't. It's just going to make them desire more. But anyway, go ahead. Final thought.
No, it'll yes, and it'll make them miserable, and then that'll become your identity, and then you'll marry the government. And you know, the biggest issue we've got. I think these corporations are more scared of the left than they are of people who have common sense, and so that's where I am. Everybody, you know, you're picking on trans people. Now, these trans people came to us. We were happy as could be in our gym. Nobody asked for this fight, but while I did cancel my wife and kids because they're not going to be there, I'm not canceling. I'm going to be at that gym. And if I need to stick around while, you know, if I need to stand outside this female locker room, I was talking to the guy who, the former Marine. I said, hey, man, if I'm around and that dude's here and we got to do something, we're going to, because that is what's coming next, right? At some point, everybody acts like, you know, what you need to do is just leave these guys alone and they'll be fine. No, the real problem's going to be when me and another dude drag this guy out of the locker room by his balls and kick him out, and then he comes in to shoot the place up because you got a bad policy. I mean, these people should be in mental institutions. If you've ever seen the chart from like the 1960s of how many people were in mental institutions compared to jail, and now it's completely inverted because we stopped treating people like they have disorders. And, you know, this was a leftist thing. I heard somebody talking about this just a couple days ago, that the group of leftists came in and they found one institution that was mistreating some of the people that they were supposed to be helping, and then free for all. Everybody's open. We're actually just mistreating these people. None of them have mental illness. Well, it's actually the exact opposite. You know, we could empty out our prisons in a hurry if we would open up these mental institutions again.
Lifetime Fitness, a publicly traded institution. Thank you, TJ. Appreciate the insight and information. Before we get to Steve Kim, I want to talk to you guys about my latest discovery, Lassie Health. Americans are hurting. Healthcare costs are out of control, and we know insurance companies don't have the answer. But now, Lassie Health is here to shake things up. Lassie Health isn't health insurance. It's access to the healthcare you want without all the red tape, restrictions, and inflated costs. Coverage starts at just $30 a month. You get transparent pricing, comprehensive coverage tailored to your needs, and access to healthcare services without breaking the bank. There are no annual or lifetime caps on services, and you can start a plan anytime. For only $30 a month, you get over 400 prescription medications for free. Free unlimited virtual mental health counseling. Free 24/7 virtual urgent care. Lab tests up to 60% off, imaging tests up to 75% off, and over 50% off the procedures and surgeries. You can even get plans with vision and dental, primary care, and comprehensive health share coverage. People are saving thousands on everything from MRI scans to ER visits, hospitalizations, and more. And high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and diabetes aren't considered pre-existing conditions as long as you haven't been hospitalized in the 12 months before you enroll. Lassie Health is a game changer. Check out affordable plans that put you in control of your health care at healthylink.com/fearless. For a limited time, you get your first month free. That's up to $100 off eligible plans. So get healthy, be healthy, and stay healthy without breaking the bank at healthylink.com/fearless. And Lassie, it's not spelled like the dog, it's spelled Lassy. All right, Steve Kim, next.
What do you do when you're about to call out somebody and you know you're going to go hard on them the next day?
With all due respect, shut the hell up.
What do you do to still maintain that relationship and do your job without pissing them off.
Stay off the weed.
You said, if I know I'm going to go hard on somebody, I will simply call them and I'll say, brother,
I've had enough of that fat bastard.
don't watch the show tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to give my strong opinions. You may want to skip it tomorrow.
Yes.
And I can't
If
help
I
it.
have
gotta
access
do my
to
job.
them, I definitely will.
That is one big pile of shit.
모두 다 빨리 박수 쳐 기다리지 말고 서둘러 Reason that I'm back is to feed you raps I see that you are 배불러 So fly
All right, welcome back. Let's roll out to Los Angeles, bring in the Korean co-sale, Steve Kim. Steve, Imane Khelif, the XY chromosome male boxer who's fighting against women, has said that the bullying must end. He's being bullied by people like Steve Kim and everybody online that wants him out of women's Olympic boxing. You guys are all the bad guys. Steve, are we bullying Imane Khelif? There's concerns that, you know, part of him is woman, part of him is man. All I know is he got high testosterone and he's got XY chromosomes. Are we bullying him?
Is the XY man being bullied? That's a very good question. Is pointing out something that is scientific bullying? Is giving your opinion bullying? I mean, have there been death threats towards him? Here's the interesting thing that is very curious to me about the coverage and how we are now moving the goalposts. Jason, isn't the argument, or wasn't the argument, that has been debunked by those who believe in that agenda, that, hey, whatever you're born with is what you are, unless, of course, you identify with something different 20, 30 years down the line. So I want to know one thing. Are we now using that standard? What you're born with is what you are? Are we drawing? Because that line had been blurred, right? Like, hey, you know, they were born biological, but hey, what really is a woman, right? That was literally said by a Supreme Court justice during her hearing. So are we now saying what you're born with is what you are? The other thing, we were told a couple years ago, due to a certain thing that shall not be named, trust the science. Okay, so the science of chromosomes and the X and the Y and the double X, the double Y. I'm going to ask again, is that the new standard? Do we trust the science or not? That's the biggest curiosity to me about this whole situation.
I don't think we trust the science. I think we trust whatever it is will make someone happy momentarily in the moment. And it's I don't think we're bullying Imane Khelif, or I can't think of the other man's name that's, you know, in the middle of all this, the Asian dude or whatever. But I just think we're trying to be protective and fair to everyone rather than just pleasuring or satisfying one person. It's for the International Olympic Committee, because I did a bunch of reading on this, because I think it's called the IBA is the group that won't sanction Imane Khelif and says that they did the testing, but because that's controlled and run out of the Kremlin, the International Olympic Committee won't accept or won't cooperate or won't abide by its ruling. And so anyway, the IOC is out here on a limb saying, you know what, we're going to go with whatever's on someone's passport. That settles it. And so if it says on your passport you're a woman or male, that settles it. Science be damned, we don't need any other testing. And so it's like if Ben Johnson had shown up and said, you know what, I identify as a non-steroid user and I've had them list that on my passport, I guess it's settled. He's not a steroid user. He identifies as we don't need to do any testing. Let's throw it all. It's too expensive to test. It's too complicated. Other than being in on gender confusion, what's the upside for the IOC in muddying up this whole thing? And is there some kind of viewership advantage to having men compete against women?
Well, I mean, unless you want to placate the less than 1% that are part of that whole movement. And speaking of Ben Johnson, he should have identified as a race car on the premium fuel. And by the way, no one wants to talk about this, but that 9.79 that he ran in 1988 at the Seoul Olympics, that whole field was in on it. If you watch that 30 for 30, at least 8 of the 9 finalists were implicated or had been suspended. And this past weekend for the fights, I spent a lot of time with Victor Conte, who certainly knows about that rule. He had a couple of fighters on the card, spent a lot of time with them last week. And he'll tell you, at least in those situations with Ben Johnson and a lot of the Olympic races, everyone is on the same playing field. They just don't know which one it's on. That's a quote from Charlie Francis, who's the coach of Ben Johnson. When it comes to this individual that is boxing, she's not on a level playing field. She's not. And I've heard this a lot, and I don't want to get into the minutia of it. A lot of athletes fail PED tests or are disqualified because they have elevated levels of testosterone. They do. I've heard that term a lot, and they're just immediately disqualified. Here in this situation, it's given a pass. I find that interesting. But what is the benefit? I honestly don't know, because I think it's a slippery slope. You know what I'd like to see happen now? In a case of be careful what you wish for, I hope that these Olympic Games now are now infiltrated by Leah Thomases in every event. I hope there's a mass migration of it. Now, because I would laugh. I am not an Olympic fan, Jay. I have not watched one moment of it outside of being in Victor Conte's room because he has still an interest in track and field. So we're with a group of people. We're watching it. I guess it was somewhat exciting, 10 seconds at a time. But I would love to see just a massive movement of a bunch of Joanna mans muddying up the field. And this, if you want to create this mess, here's your mess. Have at it.
Speaking of creating a mess, to some degree, Noah Lyles brought the 100-meter title back to America, but he did it with painted fingernails and pearls in his hair. This is a great moment for what do they call metrosexual and or uncloseted, or just for men who reject toxic masculinity. This is a big moment, and Caleb Williams is happy, and whoever that Duke basketball player is that just joined the NBA that likes to paint his nails. The feminized man, this is a big moment for them. Noah Lyles and Dwayne Wade, he tweeted out, and he's got nails painted, say something. Anyway, to me, it's all a distraction away from Noah Lyles' great accomplishment. It's one of the greatest 100-meter dash races in the history of 100-meter dash races. 7 or 8 guys all finished within less than a second or 0.09 of each other. I mean, it was an incredible race. Photo finish. They thought the guy from Jamaica won when actually Noah Lyles won. And you look at the pictures, the other guy's foot crosses first, but Noah Lyles' torso crosses first, which is more important and is how the whole thing is set up. But Noah Lyles has distracted from his incredible achievement by making it about his sexuality or a mystery about his sexuality. Your thoughts on sweet Noah Lyles, the new Carl Lewis?
Yeah, first of all, if you go to Dwayne Wade's thread and they said, say something now, check the comments. A lot of people had a lot to say about Dwayne Wade, including our own very good friend, Coach JB. He had a lot to say to Dwayne Wade. Jesse Owens did not stand up to the Third Reich for this. And where have you gone, Carl Lewis? I remember it was a big deal with Carl Lewis. There was questions about him. And he did this famous ad. I don't know if it was even an American company, where he was in a starter stance and he had high heels on, but it was kind of a gag. It was kind of like mocking it. I don't know what to really say other than this is the direction that they are taking. A lot of black male athletes, if you look at the look, maybe a lot of black males in pop culture, the classic look. I remember watching sprinting all the way in the mid-'80s. I actually used to watch a pretty good deal of it, from Calvin Smith, certainly Carl Lewis, Edwin Moses, Dennis Mitchell. They had a certain look. It's very masculine. I mean, these guys are one, you're like, wow, these are serious human beings. And I don't know who this is appealing to. I guess this is the style. But again, where have you gone, Carl Lewis? What a shame.
Carl Lewis, the original, at least whatever Carl was, it was in the closet. Noah Lyles seems to be out of the closet. I'm going to move on from this. I'm going to move on from this and talk about something that I'm super passionate about, actually. And that's the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Those ceremonies went on very quietly, in my view, over the weekend. And it was quiet because over the years, and it kind of came to a crescendo the last 2 or 3 years, they have let in people that were great football players who were not Hall of Famers. And I think they've taken an incredible amount of the shine off the Pro Football Hall of Fame induction deal. Used to be a big deal. There was a weather delay this year that I think impacted the crowd. But I've quit watching. I mean, I used to live for these speeches. So I'm going to start here, though, Steve. Steve McMichael, Bears defensive tackle, inducted into the Hall of Fame. On his deathbed, they showed everybody surrounding him in his yellow jacket. He's on his deathbed, and I know it's not the proper thing to say, but he's not a Hall of Famer. And he was a part of a great Bears defense, but everybody on that 85 Bears defense can't go into the Hall of Fame and shouldn't. Steve McMichael, I think, in 15 years, qualified for 2 Pro Bowls and made 2 All-Pro teams. I was in an argument with another Hall of Famer over the weekend, and he was like, hey, man, the guy's got 94, 95 career sacks for a defensive tackle. You know, you got to put him in. Your thoughts just initially on Steve McMichael, am I being too hard on him? I just don't see him as a Hall of Famer, Steve.
You know, look, I don't think your point is completely invalid. I mean, look, for the past, let's say, the first 10 to 15 years after Mongo's retirement, nobody ever spoke of him as a Hall of Famer. They spoke of him as a quality player, very good player, who lined up next to the great Dan Hampton, Richard Dent, who's in the Hall of Fame, Samurai Singletary, and that 85 defense is iconic. I could basically name the whole unit: Otis Wilson, Wilbur Marshall, Gary Fensick, Mike Richardson, Leslie Frazier. But I do wonder, though, is it because of his current condition that he was given consideration? Because I want to know what really changed. And you're right, once you lower that bar, now the discussion becomes, and I'm biased here because this guy went to the University of Miami, Vince Wilfork is considered one of the great nose guards of all time. Those guys have a hard time getting consideration. I think Vince made about 6 or 7 Pro Bowls. And that there is an issue. And Jason, I don't like the new format. I used to look forward to the Saturday night induction ceremony, and the Hall of Fame game would then come on a Sunday night on NBC. Now they have the game on a Thursday night, and they have the induction on like the afternoon. It does not feel the same. I'll be honest with you, does not feel as big. I don't know why they made the change. Obviously, it's because of television. But Jason, if you go back and you really research this, and I mean no disrespect to Steve McMichael or his family, you do make a valid point. When he retired, I believe in the early 90s, I did not see a lot of stories that said future Hall of Famer as they did with men like Mike Singletary. That is the truth.
Steve, I think in 2023, if my memory's correct, last year, they put Joe Klecko in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And that's what opened the door for Steve McMichael. Joe Klecko from the New York Stock Exchange and SAC Exchange, who had Joe Klecko in 1981 had 20 and a half sacks. That was his, and had some other years. Next best, he had 10 and a half sacks the year before. But other than that, but he had 78 career sacks, and this sack stat has been turned into some sort of, if you got X number of sacks, you need to be in the Hall of Fame. And if you got, and it depends on what position you played inside, you got the, and so that's the justification. That's the slippery slope. My complaints about the Hall of Fame started 18 years ago. This is not new. Someone could go find my writings and commentary in 2006, I believe. Let me make sure I'm right here. They put Harry Carson into the Hall of Fame. And I was irate. I was irate. Yeah, 2006 Hall of Fame inductee. And I was like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Harry Carson? And this guy had 9 Pro Bowls.
Yeah.
He had 9 Pro Bowls. He was a good player.
What's the complaint?
I'm just telling you, because in 2006, it wasn't just, hey, how many Pro Bowls you had? It was like, hey, did people think at one time you were potentially the greatest player at your position of all time? Did that ever cross anybody's mind? And if it didn't, you weren't a Hall of Famer. Because when you went to the Hall of Fame, you were seeing men and people that was like, man, he was so great. I thought he may be the GOAT. I thought at his position. And so when someone like Gale Sayers gets into the Hall of Fame, despite an abbreviated career, it's because at one point we thought, oh my God, it's Gale Sayers, it's Jim Brown, and Walter Payton. Or, Gale is before Walter Payton. But we thought Jim Brown and whoever, Hugh McElhaney or whatever. At one time, we thought Gale Sayers was on his way to perhaps being the GOAT. We never thought that about Harry Carson. Good player, played next to Lawrence Taylor, played on some great Giants defenses, made a bunch of Pro Bowls, nice career. But we've so lowered the standards, down. And I can remember there was a guy, Elvin Bethea. They snuck him into the Hall of Fame. And I used to like Elvin Bethea with the Houston Oilers. But Hall of Famer? Are you kidding me?
Well, okay, Jason, I have a question.
Yeah.
Did you agree with Terrell Davis getting in with his abbreviated career?
Not really. I would have been perfectly fine. Because what the Hall of Fame, it's not a Hall of Fame if they're not great players left out. You gotta a great movie, a great book, a great piece of journalism. It's what's left on the cutting room floor is what makes it great. Anytime I wrote a great reported piece, anytime during my journalism career, it was always the stories where I was like, oh man, I can't believe I have to leave this out. I don't have room for this or that. That's how I knew it was great. They're letting everybody in, or they let everybody in.
Well,
I was assured, though, Steve, that the Hall of Fame players are so upset with what's going on that the new president, who's been in place for 2 or 3 years, Jim Porter, is finally going to put a stop to it. They've complained so much and so forcefully. The players are like, y'all turn this into the Hall of Good. There's people walking up in here that just, it's like diminishing my accomplishments. And hats off, and everybody stop the tape. I'm praising Deion Sanders. Thank you, Deion Sanders, for having the guts and the balls to challenge. Like, hey man, what are y'all doing? There's people coming up in here that ain't on my level. And so allegedly, this will be the last year that it'll be easy to get into the Hall of Fame. They've made promises and assurances to the Hall of Famers that we're going to cut this off and it won't be any more 7, 8, 9 people coming in at a time. At most, I've been told, at most, there will be 5 a year coming in. I hope it's 3 or 4, but that's what I've been promised. Go ahead, Steve.
All right, so in defense of Joe Klecko, who played alongside Marty Lyons. I think it was Abdul Salam and the mercurial Mark Gastineau. He made the Pro Bowl at multiple positions. I know they went through some system changes. He played a little bit outside, then he played tackle, then he played like the slanted nose guard. Harry Carson, to me, was a guy, when he retired after the 88 season, I assumed as a kid, given the 9 Pro Bowls, he'd get his gold jacket. So we'll disagree on that. So I have a question. If you talk about you have to be the best at your position at a certain point in your career to be considered for the Hall of Fame, if you were a voter, does Frank Gore get your vote, Jason?
No.
Yes or no? Oh, you're out of your mind. The man's the third all-time leading rusher. That is the convenient truth. You know what? You have just completely.
Let me just tell you why.
My God.
Let me tell you why. Because we have, at no point has anyone said, "Oh, Frank Gore, he may be the greatest of all time." No one's thought that. We thought it about OJ. We thought it about Jim Brown. We thought it about Earl Campbell. We thought about Walter Payton. We thought about Emmitt Smith. It crossed our mind with so many. Never crossed our mind.
The third all-time leading rusher, a complete back.
You know who he is? He's Art Monk. He's Jackie Slater.
Right. Wait a minute. Did you disrespect Jackie Slater, the right tackle
one of my favorite players of all time?
You ought to be
one of my favorite players of all time.
I'm glad you don't have a vote. You're
one of my favorite players of all time, not a Hall of Famer.
There was a time he was considered among the very best, if not the best, right tackle in football. Give me a break. Jackie Slater's not. And Art Monk was a prolific possession receiver. They all can't be Randy Moss, Whitlock. This is Charlie Joyner. You probably don't think Charlie Joyner belonged.
I don't have a problem with Charlie Joyner. I don't have a problem. There was a time where I was like, ooh, Charlie Joyner could be one of the greatest receivers of all time. It never crossed my mind. I want to go back to your Joe Klecko deal and just, so walk me through how Mark Gastineau isn't in the Hall of Fame, but Joe Klecko is.
Okay, that's a great point.
There was a time, it was like, oh my God, we've never seen anything like Mark Gastineau. 20 sacks, 19 sacks, 22 sacks, all in the early 80s, before football became, PlayStation passed the football around.
I'll tell you why he didn't make the Hall of Fame. Bridget Nielsen. Women kill legs, as Mickey said to Rocky, or basically. Once Bridget Nielsen came into his life, here's the thing, Jason, you're right. The first half of the 80s, him and Lawrence Taylor, to me, were two of the best defensive players I've ever seen. But right around 1986, there was a steep decline in Gastineau, and he never had a second half of his career. That's the truth. And by 88, I think he was out of the league. He became a bit of a punchline. His teammates hated him. I don't think he was very popular with the media. And unfortunately, that does matter. And then he had an ill-fated boxing career. And speaking of boxing, I hear this a lot because my good friend Tim Bradley, people always say he doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame. I vehemently disagree, because if you look at his achievements, 2-division champion, unified at 140, beat a Hall of Famer in Juan Manuel Marquez, had a 3-fight series with the great Manny Pacquiao, had a fight of the decade against Ruslan Provodnikov, lost very few fights. And I argue this all the time. I say to all these people who don't like Tim Bradley because he's so blunt and doesn't like certain fighters or promotional companies, take your feelings out of it. And the reality is this, Jason. If a guy like Tim Bradley is the cutoff point for not making it, from this time forward, very few fighters would make Canastota their permanent home. So there's always going to be a debate. But Tim Bradley was a pound-for-pound fighter for a couple of years. He was on all those lists. And I'm with you. It should be about the all-time greats. But if your criteria is that you have to be the best at your position for a period of time, there would actually be a lot of players by your requirements would not be in Canton.
Steve, don't take my words out of context. Don't take them out of context. I said there has to be a thought that goes across a football fan's head. It's like, Is this one the greatest of all time at his position? Just has to be a thought.
All right, Joe
Like,
Namath,
is
yes
he
or no?
in contention?
Joe Namath,
No.
yes or no? Okay,
No,
you're being
no,
consistent.
he should not.
I'm with.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, he should. But again, there are some things that are so historical. First AFL team to win the Super Bowl. So historical. And he called that it trumps. It trumps to some degree. But no, Joe Namath. Hey, look. And again, this isn't because again, I hate the people that want to compare passing stats and all that other stuff because. John Elway gets so taken out of context based on stats that it's ridiculous and people don't understand. And so people just have a very unsophisticated view. But you're talking about Devin Hester in the Hall of Fame. That's a joke.
Yes.
And I love Devin Hester.
What?
It's a joke.
Oh, God.
It's a joke.
Wow. Wow.
I didn't even make our list. Hey, run that list. Did we put up a screen of
this is
17, 18 biggest? Did we have something to put on screen or is that just a note to me? Yeah, these are a bunch of guys that I think are. Harold Carmichael in the Hall of Fame is laughable. Drew
Great
Pearson.
big receiver.
Oh,
the original Calvin Johnson. Come on.
No, he was not Calvin Johnson.
He was tall. He was like 6'6".
Drew Pearson crying and whining his way into the Hall of Fame.
Jason.
Zach Thomas. No business in the Hall of Fame, and I love Zach Thomas. I'm going to give you another one that just as a first ballot Hall of Famer, I can't believe I got to say this. I apologize for saying this, but it is. Jason Taylor? First ballot Hall of Famer?
Are you out of your mind?
Me? First ballot? Are you kidding me? There was never a time that I watched Jason Taylor and go, ooh, man, this might be Reggie White or Bruce Smith 2.0. Never crossed my mind. Nice player.
Nice player.
Javon Curse. Javon Curse had a higher high than Jason Taylor.
And after fourth, fifth year, he was never an elite player. Jason Taylor had a longer, better run across his career than the Freak. Can I defend Drew Pearson a little bit? Drew Pearson had a truncated career because of an auto accident before the 84 season. He made the all-decade team, I believe, and he was the only player not to make the all-decade team for years, not in the Hall of Fame. And again, you look at his receiving numbers in that era, he stacks up. I mean, you'd be a tough bouncer at Studio 54. You're not in.
Hey,
my God, Jason.
You know who else might be home? Lynn Swann might be at home.
I agree with you on that.
John Stallworth may be at home.
No. Stallworth had the numbers. He had a much longer career peak. Lynn Swann, I'm with you. I think there were some iconic plays in being with the Steelers that really helped his cause. I don't disagree with you on that one. All right, so I want to give you a chance to atone.
John Stallworth played in 3 Pro Bowls. 3 Pro Bowls and 3,000-yard seasons.
Different era. All right, how about this?
I got a different era. I'm not even sure. Did Lynn Swann never had a 1,000-yard receiving season?
Yeah, he did.
He did make 3 Pro Bowls. Yeah. 3 Pro Bowls, 51 touchdowns.
You're going to probably piss me off again. Reggie Wayne, yes or no?
Borderline case. Maybe like a 4th or 5th ballot Hall of Famer.
Okay, like Chris Carter. That's fine. I'm not going to walk off the show now.
Chris Carter's a Hall of Famer. Reggie Wayne's not as good as Chris Carter, but he's got a case for the Hall of Fame.
Pissing me off today. Just pissing me off today.
Do you have a problem with anybody that made the Hall of Fame?
Well, I just told you, Lynn Swann. Oh. Come on.
And
I thought Tony Boselli, we talked about this a couple years ago. Tony Boselli at his peak was a elite left tackle. The problem is his career was 5 years. I was like, yeah.
Got it. So but he's a tough case, but he is someone I was like, oh my God, is this Anthony Munoz 2.0? Might be seeing the next Anthony Munoz. Again, when I rattle off the names of these other guys that I'm like, when I watched Elvin Bethea, never says, ooh, is this Deacon Jones? Is this, is this? No.
All right, here's another one, Jason. Yes or no? Another shortened career, but this guy was elite and he was peak at one of the very best. Sterling Sharpe. Come on.
There was a time. There was a time where it's like, ooh, he's on track.
Yes.
He's on, but unfortunately, things happened and he got hurt. But would I rather have Sterling Sharpe in the Hall of Fame than some of these other guys? Absolutely.
Yes.
Because again, Sterling Sharpe, I'm looking at 5 of 7 years. He's in the Pro Bowl. 3 years, he's all pro.
Yes.
Big, MVP in the MVP race, 2 years, finished 4th and 8th in the MVP race.
Yeah.
I'd have, Sterling Sharpe, but
Michael Irvin, the one time I interviewed him, said Sterling Sharpe's the only guy I thought outside of Jerry Rice was on my level. I'll leave you with one more because I think this is a very interesting case. You want to talk about a guy that was dominant and people thought he was the best in the sport at one time, but I think there's a lot of issues that cloud his candidacy. Your old buddy, Antonio Brown, yes or no?
Yes.
I don't disagree, by the way.
He's got the resume.
Yeah.
He's got the resume.
He had a good peak.
And we were sitting, he was on track. He was nipping at Jerry Rice's heels.
Yes.
If he finishes out the way that he's supposed to finish out, people are like, "Ooh, boy, this is the second coming of Jerry Rice," but he blew it. But yeah, he's a Hall of Famer. See, I want to move on to something lighter and just get your thoughts. There was an interesting picture floating around the Olympics. The Egyptian beach volleyball team versus, I think it's Italy's or Spain's beach volleyball team. Look at the contrast in uniforms there. Cheeks out, suns out for the Spain team. Covered head to toe, Egyptian team. If you had to choose one path, Western man, which way should we be leaning more into? Who's got it more right in this picture, Egypt or Spain?
Well, hold on. If you're asking me as a spectator who's a red-blooded Western American male, you know where we're going. I mean, beach volleyball every 4 years is required viewing for a lot of us. I mean, if you said, Steve, you have to watch the Olympics, we're putting a gun to your head. I wouldn't watch the basketball. The amateur boxing is boring to me. Maybe a little bit of track and field, but I'll just say this, based on that picture, I might go beach volleyball. There, I said it, I admitted it, I'm not ashamed.
Yes, the lustful man in me much prefers Spain. I love volleyball uniforms and all that other stuff, but the honest, righteous man in me says all of this stuff is sexually exploitive and that Egypt is closer to the right path than the rest of us are to the right path. It doesn't make sense that they have to be dressed in such a sexually provocative way. None of this makes sense, particularly as it relates. I look at the track and field and the women and how everybody's got to have their rear end out. This is all intentional. It's all being sexualized, maybe to promote interest in women's sports. Maybe they felt like we had to go that route to get any interest. But it's anyway, I think Egypt is closer to the truth. And, the old man in me, the old righteous man in me is like, hey, man, put some clothes on. I don't need to be thinking about. Anyway, final thoughts, Steve, before I let you go. I want to get your thoughts on, Skip Bayless. His final day on Undisputed was last Friday. Steve, he did not say a farewell on air. He did not address his departure on air. My understanding is that the executives and the people at Fox wanted him to address his departure on air. He refused because he's angry at them, and he blames them for not negotiating peace between Skip and Shannon Sharpe. He's now blaming the executives at Fox Sports rather than perhaps himself. And so He wouldn't address his departure on air. He put out a tweet shortly after leaving the air saying that, that was his final day and he's on to bigger and better things. Two questions here. Do you like the way he exited? And is Skip Bayless's television career over?
Skip Bayless is a Sinatra. He's going to do it his way. So in that sense, I guess I respect it. But let's go back to what you said. He should not be blaming the executives for not brokering peace with Shannon Sharpe. Here's what he should have done if he really cherished that relationship and he understood that there was a certain chemistry that they developed. How about just treating your partner better to a point where he does not want to walk off? Some of those exchanges, especially the one where he said, "You're not Tom Brady," and put your glasses back on. Skip caused this. He's the one that caused the divorce. He's the one that had Shannon Sharpe venturing and looking at other options. And looks like Shannon Sharpe has done pretty doggone good for himself. So that right there, I completely disagree with Skip. That you caused this issue. You should have been a little bit more respectful towards your partner because that show was a partnership. Let's get that correct. The other thing is, I think it's strange, Jason, how this thing just kind of went out with the whimper and not a bang. I mean, say what you want about Skip, whether you hate him, love him, or loathe him. He's impactful. He has been very important to this genre, for better or worse. And to just kind of say, okay, see you whenever, with no celebration, with no tributes, nothing. It kind of reminds me of these boxing careers where, like, even the great Ray Robinson kind of wound down in Tijuana, losing to fighters that he never would have used as sparring partners. It just seems kind of underwhelming. But Jason, we spoke about this last year when they tried to revive this show with a cast of thousands. He was left as an outsider on his own show. I think they added too many people. I think they should have kept it very simple. Less would have been more. All you really needed was Michael Irvin and maybe another guy. You didn't need all those other people. And I lost interest in that show when it didn't have the playmaker on. And I saw segments where he's just a guy sitting out in right field doing nothing for 20 minutes at a time. It didn't even feel like his own show. But I go back to what I said. This was something that he caused because of the way he treated his partner. And do I think his television career is over? In terms of being with a major traditional broadcast network, yes. But as we've seen, traditional media now is taking a backseat to independent media. But as you've seen by his YouTube numbers, that may not be his core audience.
Yeah, listen, you said is impactful. I would say was impactful.
Okay.
And I would say that his impact was, hey, I'm at ESPN, and virtually anybody that's on ESPN during that time frame was impactful, particularly back when it wasn't for any and everybody, when before Mina Kimes, before Sarah Spain, before Pablo Torre and Bomani Jones and just any and everybody, regardless of level of accomplishment. Yeah,
Right.
but it's just like there used to be like, oh, well, Tony Kornheiser and Mike Wilbon, they were such accomplished journalists that they're on ESPN's platform, blah, blah, blah. Skip Bayless, early adopter. And it's like, it said something significant about it. He's so good and so impactful, he's on ESPN. Next thing you know, every Tom, Dick, and Harry is on ESPN. And, oh, this person has a blog, or this person once wrote an article for some organization we have no idea, blah, blah, is now on ESPN. They're just blah, 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 blah. And so once that got diluted, and now people are having to stand on their own 2 feet. So to me, Skip struck while the fire was hot, and he rode that wave from being an early adopter and someone that got identified early. But Skip has never been a skilled or talented or even likable broadcaster or anyone that's really all that provocative beyond the fact his willingness to take on LeBron James, someone who got identified as, hey, don't criticize this person, And he took him on at a time when LeBron was actually far easier to defend than he is now. When LeBron was halfway likable and doing a lot of great things when Skip was trashing him, and that made him kind of interesting. But now, I don't, outside of, corporate media, outside of the benefit of ESPN or Fox Sports saying, hey, you should listen to this guy, I don't know if Skip Bayless has anything impactful to say or provocative or even interesting to say off of those platforms. And so, to me, this was inevitable and 7 years, 8 years in the making that it was going to crash and burn this way. Then, let's say, 64-year-old white guy to now 71-year-old white guy trying to pass himself off as part of the hip-hop culture, that was unsustainable. That was and Shannon, again, what he should have realized is like, wow, based on the lane and brand that I've chosen, Shannon's carrying me. I can't be in this hip-hop lane, because when he was with Stephen A. Smith, it was less of a hip-hop lane and it was more, hey, these are two newspaper journalists. He came over to FS1 and partnered with a non-journalist, an athlete, and they turned it into a hip-hop show. And an old white guy is the face of a hip-hop show, that I can't believe the death took this long. And to me, it's why the peak of it was never that high, despite all the promotion and all the work they did trying to hype him up. They topped out averaging 220,000 viewers. And then as soon as they removed the pin, Shannon Sharpe, they started getting 40 and 50,000 viewers. It's inevitable.
Yeah, I mean, Jason, there's no doubt. Look, it was admittedly cringeworthy to see Skip just pander and what he did, saying stuff like Shedeur Sanders, maybe the best player in college football. He actually spoke last year. I know we have plenty of time to talk about Prime coming up, that Colorado, after their 2-0 start, they might be in the playoffs. And to that I go, Jim Mora, playoffs? You kidding me? Playoffs? And that thing fell apart. I mean, the pandering was so bad, I halfway expected him to show up in a Kangol hat and some Karl Kani or some Aniche clothing. I mean, because I would look at these pictures of him showing off his Jordans, like, oh, he's the cool old white guy. There's nothing cool about a cool old white guy trying that hard to be the cool old white guy. Like me, I lean into the fact I'm just an old codger now. I mean, look at this hair. I am what I am. I'm not changing. That's going to be my brand, but I'm not going to try to be something that I'm not. But let me give Skip Bayless some credit, Jason. On my bookcase, in my book collection, there's a lot of Skip Bayless, from God's Coach and to other books related to the Dallas Cowboys of the 90s. I think he's an absolute must-read. I know there's a lot of harsh feelings from several Cowboy players led by Troy Aikman, and I get it. I am not arguing that. But when I read these books, I felt like, wow, I kind of know the history or the inside baseball of that organization. And I thought he was very provocative. I thought he was very entertaining, and I give him credit. I thought he had a very good career, at least as a writer.
He did. I think a lot of that, what you said, is true. Let me ask you this, Steve. If Skip Bayless had embraced being the curmudgeonly white guy,
yes,
who was the polar opposite of the hip-hop black athlete Shannon Sharpe, the role Shannon Sharpe was playing, I think that would have been better TV.
Yes.
But I think Skip got bullied by today's modern culture that like, oh, if I'm that, I'll be reviled. And Twitter and everybody will call me racist. And so I don't want to be that. So he tried to be something that he's not. And so there would have been a personal consequence if he had played the role that is actually natural and authentic to him. Curmudgeon. Older guys like, man, I really don't get this hip hop stuff. And that's your thing, Shannon. And I'm trying to understand it, but would have been more successful. But instead, he tried to make that group of people love him. And he paid Lil Wayne a bunch of money to make them love him. and it just didn't work. He didn't get either advantage.
Well, they got a catchy theme song out of it, okay? But you're right. The authenticity was not there. There were things that Skip said beyond sports that you said, wow, he's either the guiltiest white liberal or he's being a phony fraud. And I think that the core audience of middle America just said, we're not listening to this guy, wag the finger and tell us that we are flawed people who are racist. I think there's a part of it that is absolutely true. I mean, Jason, to swing this back to me, yeah, you're right. I love being the Korean curmudgeon. I'm going to give you my opinion. I'm not going to go out there and form my opinion to please the audience. I think once the appeal of Skip Bayless was at one time long ago, he gave his opinion. And whether you agreed or disagreed with it, you said, you know what, that's what he thinks. I hate this guy. I cannot stand him. And I'm going to watch him every day. But once he started to become inauthentic, he no longer became must-see TV for those who once did enjoy him.
Steve, give me an early thought on this, because we may have to discuss this at some other point in more detail. But it feels FS1 is now forced to, and, you know, forced to sounds negative, but they're all in on Colin Cowherd. He has all the leverage now, and my understanding is they're going to build him a second studio out in Chicago so that he can work from Chicago some of the time. I think he and his wife own a home in Chicago. That's going to be part of it. But also there are reports now that there's early reporting from Mike McCarthy that Nick Wright is going to be the face of FS1, and its leading personality, or one of its leading personalities. And it's quite interesting how they. Anyway, I'll just leave it at that. What do you think about a Colin Cowherd, Nick Wright combination as the face of FS1? Will that be more or less successful than Cowherd and Skip Bayless?
I mean, the filleting of LeBron's going to be unbearable. I mean, even more unbearable than it is now. I mean, you might as well just call that clutch talk. I mean, let's just be honest about it. I mean, look, on Twitter with guys like Apex Jones, who have made a pretty good living on Twitter being anti-LeBron. And by the way, Apex, hell of a job. You're doing God's work there. Though I will say this, they're going to cause a buzz because the people that are so anti-LeBron and pro-Michael Jordan, who are the good guys, they're going to get a lot of content off of them. But again, I wonder, though, in the long term, in the long run, because LeBron's not going to play forever and he's much closer to the end than the beginning, is that sustainable? That's the question.
I don't think it is. I'm not talking about Cowherd, but, you know, Nick Wright is cut from the Bomani Jones cloth and Jamel Hill cloth and some of the other cloth of been thrown in a microwave, haven't accomplished much, and their entire brand is based off the marketing of the television network. And that only has so much life. And so who knows, but I wanted to ask a question. We may follow up on that later. Steve, I'm going to let you go because I got to do some justice for TT and get us out of here. Thank you, Korean Cosell. Justice for TT, next. You guys will hear me talk on this show about how immature I was as a young person and as a child.
Dude, check it out. Bud Island.
Zeus, you rapscallion.
I literally, and they're gonna laugh. And they're gonna be like, they're gonna laugh and be like, I can't believe you're admitting this, but it's just factual. I used to poop my pants all the way through 3rd and 4th grade.
You serious?
That's how much of an idiot and how retarded I used to be.
You sure about that? You sure about that?
Justice for TT. My favorite way to end the show is fighting for justice. That's what we do on this show. That's what we do as fearless soldiers. We fight for justice for TT. And today, TT is Olympic American sprinter Sha'Carri Richardson. Sha'Carri Richardson needs justice. She had to settle for silver, and I saw this tweet over Twitter, over X, where someone pointed out, and I can't pronounce the guy's name, but he was like, look at Olympic racism at the Boston Globe is truly remarkable. Watching a white man win bronze is euphoric, but a black woman settles for silver. A white woman body shamed is growing the sport, but an Arab woman body shame means pile on misinformation. Legacy media is failing us. Whew. This was a lot to digest. And the Boston Globe celebrates some dude that got in third place and comes up with a headline that, hey, celebrating the guy for getting third place. Then the Boston Globe says Sha'Carri Richardson settles for silver, and somehow this is a manifestation of racism, and it's not a manifestation of expectations. And this whole body shaming of an Arab woman, it just doesn't compute. Sha'Carri Richardson is the reigning world champion in the 100-meter dash. She went to the Olympics to win gold. That was her expectations. That's why, trust me, she feels like she settled for silver. Whoever this was that came in bronze in some sport that really doesn't matter compared to the 100-meter dash in the Olympics, they're satisfied with third place. They just wanted to medal, and so they're happy about it. Sha'Carri Richardson's not happy. She wanted to win gold. And so, as usual, the demand for racism doesn't equal the supply, and so the people that are in demand of racism just make it up. And somehow Sha'Carri Richardson is a victim, and we're all a victim of the Boston Globe for writing a headline that says Sha'Carri Richardson settled for silver. It's just amazing that people are making a living, people are devoting their lives to policing the thoughts, the expressions, the headlines, the expectations of white people or of white institutions or just anything can be framed as racist. This people that know nothing about sports, don't come from a sports background, are analyzing sports and being platformed and celebrated and led into a conversation that they have no business being in. And they're just stirring confusion. So Sha'Carri Richardson is today's victim, who we must seek justice for. How dare the Boston Globe suggest that she settled for silver? The Boston Globe should have celebrated this black queen for coming in second place, even though that black queen only wanted to come in first place. So we must fight for justice for TT. Because if she's not given justice, she'll probably return to smoking marijuana and eliminating herself from Olympic competition. That's Justice for TT. That's our show today. We'll play tomorrow. We'll see you tomorrow.
Waiting for the countdown, coming off the breakdown, standing in line for freedom. Looking for a breakout, feeling like a standoff, nothing in life like freedom. Came like a fighter, strike like a ladder, making all this moves for freedom. I want freedom. No negotiation, my sister, no relation. We all just wanna have freedom. Sitting on a corner, never been alone. I'm breaking my back for freedom. Blessed, we are living, get back. We are receiving, no deceiving. We all wanna be free. We want freedom.